Now that we're almost back to normal and a lot of people are not wearing masks anymore, what is it that you've been itching to do that you finally got a chance to do again? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm adjusting mics, I'm adjusting this, and I'm adjusting that because you could get with this, you could get with that. Um, for me, I'm I'm just glad to see things opening up, I guess. Um, for the last few weeks, I've been talking about this, that, and the other, but mostly I've been talking about some of the things that makes us as Black people and me as a Black man, especially. Um, I don't look my age, or so I've been told. And no, I don't color my hair. When I was in high school, I said that when I got old, all I was going to have was a touch of gray on my temples. And it was prophetic because that's basically where I've got my gray on my temples. I didn't say anything about my chinny chin chin, but that seems to be the most prevalent gray that I have. Um, I'm glad to see things happen and open back up. And I'll just kind of give you a personal inventory. But before I do that, I want to say good evening, welcome to the show. My name is Hank Batiste. Um, I always say this because I truly, truly, truly mean it. I'm humbled that you guys, all the things you could be doing on a Thursday night, you choose to spend your Thursday nights with me. One of the reasons I decided to choose Thursday nights for my show is because once upon a time, Thursday nights was the best of Black entertainment. We had the Cosby Show, we had A Different World, we had the Keatings, and I can't remember the name of the show with Alex Keating, Michael J. Fox, and those guys. So we had it was family night on NBC. So much so that they used to call it, comedians called it National Black uh, National Black Network of something. I forgot. But I'm truly humbled that you guys choose to spend your Thursday nights with me. The name of my show is called Omit the Logic. I got something to say. It must be true. I always say omit the logic because a lot of things that are happening, it just doesn't make sense. It defies logic and definitely physics. As I said, my name is Hank Batiste. I'm your host tonight, every Thursday night. And tonight, the voices in my head, they're perplexed and amused amid the Juneteenth holiday. Amused because we still don't have George Floyd Act, a bill, or law. Um, so yeah, I'm a bit amused, but in an irony kind of way. I'm not really. It's not anything to laugh at. Um, this last month, I've been coming down on all of the things that creates what I call a Black Lives Matter hashtag. I talked about the police encounters. I talked about local governments, and a lot of these local governments are municipalities. And I'm trying not to get angry with this, but I'll tell you why in a minute. Local governments or Black municipalities are making a killing, no pun intended, off of the poorest of their constituents, that being the Black, the poor whites, and disenfranchised. So I talked about that a little bit, but I'm going to revisit it as I develop the story about what happened to me personally. And I hate talking about myself on my show, mainly because I don't like to come off like, you know, some of these people who have a show, and no matter who they have on this show, the story is about them. So what I usually try to do is channel some of the things that are happening today, call it current events, with some of the things that you guys are talking about or things that is happening in the media or some of the personal stories I get and the feedback I get from you guys, some of my friends and family. So that's usually the basis of my show. And how I try to bring that together is from a historical perspective. Um, so I've been doing that too. Each week, I've been doing this as though it were a college course, and that I had a syllabus of sorts. So I started off telling you a little bit, and I try to build on this, and I try to build on that. And then last week, I started getting into some historical terms like Dixiecrat and what have you. And I don't want this to be boring, but I want this to be educational simply because I think it's how we keep us engaged. We don't. The only time we talk about us from a historical perspective is the 28 days of February, or maybe the first 14 days, and maybe on Martin's birthday. You know what I mean? But if we celebrated all of the landmarks, all of the momentous occasions and events of Black people in America, we would be celebrating every day. Trust and believe. So part of why I do this is because I want to keep us, not just Black people, but people of color, people who are disenfranchised, people who can relate to the struggles, if you will, engage. Because I think when America takes care of us, it's a kind of gentler America, and we have more unity across the board. That's one of the reasons I'm amused about this whole Juneteenth holiday. And I made a post on my page, and I made it kind of laughable because I said, F Juneteenth as a holiday, give me my 40 acres, and instead of a mule, give me a brand new, fully loaded pickup truck. So if I have 40 acres and a pickup truck, you understand, we as a people can make some strides. The main thing is one of the reasons this promise was never fulfilled because property ownership is the first way we build wealth in this country. I started off by telling you that the original founding fathers and Thomas Jefferson, it was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And they changed property to the pursuit of happiness. And I think they did so because it made it too obvious. So, without getting caught up in that, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about a little bit more about why I'm perplexed, why I'm amused, and why I'm pissed off. Um, all of these things still lead to Black hashtags, if you will. Uh, I just can't believe what's happening this week. Um, Biden is back from his first meeting with Russia, and I don't understand. One of the things that perplex me is the media, because in my mind, they showed Despicable Donnie with his delusional ass more respect than they're showing Biden. So that's one of the things. The other things is I kept talking about these predictions that Despicable Donnie, delusional Donnie, would not fade to black, no pun intended, that he would continue to be a thorn in America's side. And I had no idea he would be pulling down the Republican Party the way they have. Tonight, we're going to talk about a couple things. All of this fake news, if you will. I'm going to go into Dixiecrat a little bit more because the thing about politics is tricks, a lot of tricks. And what I saw last week, I started calling Joe Manchin a neo Dixiecrat. So I'm going to go into a little bit more of what a Dixiecrat is and kind of give you a little bit more about the history. This being a 30-minute show, I'll introduce something and then I move on to something else. So sometimes I'm going to revisit things to give you a better understanding of what it is I'm talking about. So without any further ado, folks, welcome to the show. My name is Hank Batiste. Omit the logic. This shit makes no sense. Let's do this. I got something to say. It must be true. Last week, briefly explained how the Democrats, started systematic racism that we refer to as Jim Crow. I want to revisit this mainly because I think it's important or imperative that we understand the term and that we be able to recognize when someone exhibit these characteristics of being a Dixiecrat. Last week, I kind of told you that Lincoln was a Republican. I also told you that Lincoln was a little bit of a complex man. Historians kind of refer to him as a political enigma. It just means that he flip-flopped. In today's terms, we would probably say he talked out both sides of his neck. Some historians say he did this to try to keep the Union together. The conundrum was, he said that his slaves could be freed, but only after his wife died. So on one hand, he wanted to abolish slavery to save the Union. On the other hand, he wanted to keep his slaves in bondage until it was convenient for his family to move on. After signing the Emancipation Proclamation, and I'm just kind of reiterating some of this stuff, in 1870, Black men, we were given the right to vote. In 1877, there was like I told you, there was a compromise, if you will, where we were kind of sold out. We were sold out by the Republicans. During Reconstruction, they tried to integrate us into the fabric of America. So they gave us things like, they started giving us land. They started making us politicians and put us in charge of ourselves. Southern Democrats were disillusioned. They were pissed because their way of life. Here's the quick and dirty. Southern Democrats were mostly illiterate. They were indentured slaves one generation removed themselves. A lot of them spent their days in paupers' prisons in Great Britain, and they got to go home once the debt was paid off. So if I owed a debt to society, not only did I pay that debt, but my family had to work to pay off the debt as well. This was kind of like the prototype for sharecropping, because we saw some of this in the South. So Southern Democrats were pissed because they were not the aristocrats. Everything that they had was tied up in the land that they lived on. And since they had never learned how to farm the land, how to take care of the land, how to do all of these things, they wanted to hold on to these slaves. So they wanted to basically do away with Reconstruction. When we had this 50-50 tie, the Republicans sold us out. They said that they would take the troops out of the South and allow the Southerners to live the way they wanted to live. This meant that Southern Democrats could make it hard for us to vote, so they start instilling poll taxes and identification, and the only people that were more illiterate than the Southern whites was the newly freed slaves, because remember, it was illegal for us to be able to read and write. So the quick and dirty was, this was the infancy or the beginning of Jim Crow. One of the most famous Dixiecrats was Strom Thurmond. He went from being a Democrat to being a Dixiecrat and then became a Republican. And it was kind of the swing point for two things. It was a swing point where we started to be flipped from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. And it was the flip for when the Republican Party started to become more isolated and upscale and less intuitive of our needs. I keep bringing up Dixiecrats because when I look at today's news, I keep seeing Joe Manchin. I call him Manless Chin because he's full of shit. There's no other way of saying it. He's holding the Democrats hostage and making it hard for them to get anything done. He's voting against his commander-in-chief, the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden. Joe Biden had this vision to build back better, not making things the way they were, but making things better than they've ever been. And I think he tried to do this when you start to look at his cabinet. I said all of that to say Joe Manchin is the new Dixiecrat. He's not really a Democrat because on one hand, he's not voting to do away with the filibuster. He's not voting for the George Floyd Act. He's not voting for anything. He brings up some legislation knowing that, but he says he still won't do away with the legislation, knowing full well that once and if the Republicans ever get a hold of a majority again, the first thing they're going to do is do away with the filibuster so that they can railroad shit. When I said I wasn't going to curse, when Moscow Mitch had the audacity to say publicly that he would never allow one of Joe Biden's nominees to be put on the Supreme Court, it pissed me off because the first thing they did is talk about us doing this, that, or the other. I don't want to get too bogged down in it, but I keep saying this, it's so important because we're trying to play by the rules, or the Democrats are trying to play by the rules, and the Republicans aren't. I'm going to just move on from that. One of the things that has me amused and pissed is this nuclear engineer, Chris Jones. He was a dean at MIT, so this brother is really heavy. He's trying to restore diversity by running against Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That's the chick that looked like Uncle Fester that used to be Trump's press secretary, Mike Huckabee's daughter. Meanwhile, his brother, a registered Republican, is running for attorney general. So imagine that. Amused and pissed. Val Demings used to be the chief of police in Orlando. She's currently a U.S. representative. This sister has shown during the impeachment trials, she's shown just how on the ball she is, and I think she could get a lot done. She's running against Marco Rubio for Senate seat. Last week, I told you the only way that they can nullify Joe Manchin is to get more Democrats in the Senate so that he's not the deciding vote. If he chooses to vote with the Republicans, we can still overrule him. The other thing they're doing, people from D.C., I've got this strong history with D.C. I lived up there for 12 years. D.C. has been trying to become a state since Jesus was a baby. They know if DC became a state, it would tilt things in our favor. If Manchin played alone, today it would be 51-51 because DC would go with the Democrats, and chances are Manchin, the new Dixiecrat, will vote with the Republican. Hence, me calling him a Dixiecrat. Amused and pissed. Marco Rubio once called Trump a fraud. Now he's one of his strongest supporters. Why? Amused and pissed. Amused and pissed. Juneteenth is a holiday. But what do we get for it? Just another opportunity to drink, have a barbecue, and what have you. I'm not saying that we shouldn't celebrate it. All I'm saying is they've used it as a distraction. What we need is voting rights. What we need is this George Floyd bill passed so that it can become a law. What we need is to make sure that we're not continuously becoming Black Lives Matter hashtags. What we need is somebody like a Val Demings who could go into the Senate and help some things that come from the House get passed or brought to the floor in the Senate so that we can see things like police reform. So when I say Juneteenth becoming a holiday is a joke, I mean, it's like being in a relationship. It's like being that woman in a relationship, and the man beats her behind and then gives her a bouquet of flowers. If your eyes closed, you don't even know what color the flowers are. So stop with the bullshit and give us what we really need. We've got Martin's holiday, and we don't really celebrate it. Okay, let me not go off. Amused and pissed. Now, and I won't even call them right-wing media. I won't call Fox even a media station. I will say this. These knuckleheads, including the Republicans, are now saying that it was the FBI that was responsible for what the media is still wrongly calling an insurrection. What I have been calling since day one, January 6 and 7, a failed coup attempt. Amused and pissed. Amused and pissed. Liz Cheney has the audacity to say she's disgusted now because now she sees how ridiculous it is for her Republican colleagues to still be spewing these lies. But she has yet to come over from the dark side and say, okay, if Manchin votes with the Republicans, and I have a problem with where the Republican Party has gone, then I am going to vote with the Democrats. So don't come to me with your bullshit talking about how disgusted you are. Slightly amused, but extremely pissed. Moving on. These are some of the things that I call patronizing. Skip the holiday. I don't mean do away with it. I mean, let's not focus on the holiday. Let's not allow it to be a distraction. We don't need another excuse to take off, to overeat, drink excessively, toke, and then get into fights and the murder rate go up. I said it, yes. If I pissed you off, then so be it. I mean what I say. We need things like give me reparations, give me something. If you don't give me 40 acres, give me 20, give me 10. Give my grandchildren a chance to start accumulating some wealth as a result of eons and generations of systematic Jim Crow, what we call racism. Because now Jim Crow has a grandson, James Crow III, and is so ingrained in who we are and what we are. It's hard to break that cycle. We need this legislation so that we don't continue to become. If I could look at the news for one solid week and not see a mass shooting, if I could look at the news one Saturday night, one Sunday night, one Monday morning, and not see 10, 15 people shot and killed in Chicago, 10 people, 8 people killed in New Orleans, 6 people killed in Houston, 4 people killed in Dallas, 4 people killed in Los Angeles, and so on and so on and so on. Give us something so that we are not plagued with being in these conditions that perpetuate us killing ourselves. Give us more than just a holiday. To these Black municipalities and local governments, stop pimping your people. Stop using your people to make money and putting them in a situation where they can't get jobs and what have you. It pisses me off, folks. It pisses me off to no end. There's a lot of things that we need. We don't just need this. This foolishness of the FBI, give us, if you give me one thing, give us a real investigation into January 6th and stop calling it a freaking, it took every inch, every fiber within my body to say freaking and not saying the other F word, and hold those people accountable. And let's stop with the bullshit of the FBI and Antifa and Black Lives Matter as responsible when we know who's truly responsible. Georgia, New York, Arkansas, somebody needs to indict this fool. All the things that he's done and continues to do is because not only does he get away with it, but now his people start to get away with it. So they can bully at will. Give me something that we can stand on. Give us some solid ground to build on. Folks, I'm upset. I'm amused, ironically amused, and greatly pissed. I should say gravely pissed. That's all I got for you tonight. My name is Hank Batiste. Omit the logic. This shit makes no sense. I got something to say. I wish this bullshit wasn't true. As always, important, I invite you to go to my YouTube, sign up, hit subscribe, give me a thumbs up, then give me some feedback. Let me know what you liked. Tonight, I feel like I'm off the rails. I tried to teach for a minute because I didn't want to get so emotionally charged as I am. But there's so many things happening that we are allowing to happen. That's why I come here week in, week out to try to educate and invigorate, energize the masses. You, my family, are the masses. Take my message, each one, teach one, so each one can reach one, so we as a people can rise. As always important. I wish you love. I wish you peace, my family. Hair grease. I'm out of here. Good night. 1 2 1 2. What you gonna do? Yeah, B.